All right, I got cut off on the last one, so I had to make this video in two parts. My apologies, and you can't see me this time, but here I am. So we're talking about the anthropology of gender. Anthropology of gender is interesting, and it has gone in a lot of different directions. We talk a lot about gender as a social construction. And one of the things that you need to understand about a social construction is that when anthropologists talk about something being a social construction, a lot of times people think that means that we're saying that it isn't real, that it's somehow imaginary or something like that. And I want to clarify that when we're talking about social construction, we don't mean that it's not real. We don't mean that it's not an important part of our social lives. An example of another thing that we describe as a social construction is money or currency. And you can understand how money is a social construction, I think, because it doesn't have any value unless people have agreed that it has value. But what happens is when enough people have agreed that it has value and it becomes embedded in our social system, like money is, it's very, very hard to work outside of it. And so money is also a classic example of what Emile Durkheim called a social fact. So money is a social fact because it is a social construction, but it's become so ingrained in the way that we go about our lives that we can't really live outside of it. Gender is kind of similar. It's a social construction in the sense that we have decided culturally what it means to be a member of a particular gender or how we decide to map gender onto biological sexes. This varies by culture. You've probably heard this in classes before, that some cultures have more than two genders, that a binary gender that's very crystallized has been a particular culture concept that people are pushing back against. And in anthropology and social science theory, you'll find queer theory is really interesting. Queer theory questions whether, for example, we should even discuss norms or pushing against norms, or whether the idea of a norm is problematic. So some people argue that they just want to be accepted for whoever they are and that they shouldn't be judged based on a particular gender conformity. And others say the norm itself is the problem. And queer theory gets into this idea of the norm itself is a problem. The idea that there is something that's normal versus abnormal itself is socially constructed and can be problematic if you're talking about something like pushing back against a binary construction of gender. So what I want you to do to understand the idea of masculine or feminine as a social construction is we have an activity for this week. So in part one of the activity, you're going to click on the link and go over to Google Forms, where I've set up a form, and there's a bunch of descriptions of people. And what I want you to do is go through it kind of quickly. I don't want you to have to put too much thought into it because that would sort of ruin the point of it. So what I want you to do is I want you to click through that survey in Google Forms and read each description and just put your initial reaction. Is this a man or a woman? I know that there's room for them to be either, that there's room for them to be trans, that there's room for them to be a lot of different things. But what I'm asking you to do in this is just guess whether the person is a man or a woman, or a girl or a boy if it's a younger person, a man or a woman, and then click through to the end. And once you've selected one answer for each one, I want you to look at what your classmates have chosen. If it doesn't let you do that, please let me know. I will try to fix it. But hopefully when you get to the end of that form, it will let you see everyone else's responses. I've tried to set it up that way. So what you should do is you should look at how your classmates have responded, and you should figure out if there are some that everybody's all over the place, that there are lots of different guesses, and if there are some that everybody guessed kind of consistently. And then I want you to come back to bblearn and do the second part of the activity, which is answer my questions in a bblearn survey based on your observations from that activity. And I'm going to look at your answers as part of your participation for week 12. So I already talked about going into changing our peer reviews and changing the deadline on the methods section. So for this week, make sure and watch the video on Judith Butler's theory of gender. Judith Butler is really central to our construction of gender, although people have been pushing back. And if you're interested in this concept, look into Spivak's theory about gender, look at queer theory. They take it a lot farther. There's a lot of people pushing for more intersectionality in theorizing of gender because gender is only one identity and people experience lots of different identities and experience the world in different ways based on those combinations of different identities. So this is just sort of the really basic beginning understanding of theory of gender and anthropology. After you've done that video, I want you to also watch the video on improving your writing and think about starting your methods section next week and then your interpretation or your results section the week after that. And I will put more guidance up about that results section next week. And a couple of videos on how to report your qualitative results and how you might want to write that up. That improving your writing is really a good one for that as well. So please email me if you have questions. I'm going to take down the discussion board because it just isn't quite working, and I want you to just email me if you have questions, and I'll post those as announcements if I think they're things that everyone needs to know. So please continue to send me your questions. I apologize that I haven't had everything as perfectly organized as I would like. It's been a challenge to get our class online, as I'm sure it's been a challenge for you to take the class online, so I apologize for some hiccups, but we're working on getting it functioning as well as possible. So continue to give me your feedback. Please continue to ask questions. And if you feel like you're struggling, if you've gotten behind, please also send me an email and let me know how things are going. I would really, really like to hear from you this week. One thing that I would like you to do this week as part of your participation is to send me an email and let me know how you're doing. Let me know what your plan is for finishing up this semester. Let me know how it's looking for you to finish your ethnography, or if there have been some issues that you're having trouble addressing. For your participation for this week, I would really like to hear from every single person about how things are going for you right now and your plan for completing the semester. I look forward to hearing from you, and I will post the week 13 module by Monday of next week. And please, please stay in touch and let me know if you have questions.